This is SimNews.TV, and we have ourselves a very, very good interview for you lovely, lovely people watching at home. We've managed to get ourselves a Mr. Winner of the second round of the World's Fastest Gamer on the R Factor side of qualifying. We got ourselves Jeffrey Rietveld. Jeffrey, a very straightforward victory, I do believe it was for you. 2/10 quicker at your home race in qualifying in Super Pole, and then you take a race victory by 4.5 seconds. You couldn't ask for really too much more.
Yeah, it was a great week, to be honest. I qualified already in the first round for Silverstone, but unfortunately, or well, not really unfortunately, but I was on holiday, so I couldn't make the race and decided to try again in the second round. And yeah, everything worked perfect.
Everything certainly did work perfect for you, and especially in the early goings, though, you did have yourself a little bit of a challenge heading towards turns 1 and 2. So, for you having to deal with close quarter combat, I believe I was talking to you a little bit earlier, trying to fish for information. But is it true that you haven't sim raced for about a year or so?
Yeah, I actually didn't touch a wheel for like a year, or maybe I've touched it once meanwhile, but no real competition or anything. And when I saw this competition, I thought, well, let's give it a try. And I just wanted to see, um, yeah, how my pace would be compared to the world top right now.
Well, you certainly have shown that you've got a good pace. I mean, I've broadcasted on a couple of your races when you were in iRacing on the Formula Renault with Orion Race Team. So there is certainly still some pace there. But of course, you do go back quite a bit in sim racing, and especially in R Factor. I do believe it was Stoffel Van Dorn you had a couple of races with, the McLaren driver.
Yeah, that's true. Me and Stoffel did a lot of driving back in the day. Yeah, just for fun, basically. We would both be on Skype and drive GP2, F1, and just have some fun battles together. And it's like really good to have a good driver like Stoffel beside you and practice racecraft kind of stuff, and also setup related stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
Certainly is, and in that sort of sense then, because you have that relationship with some of the drivers already at McLaren, do you feel that it will be a little bit easier for you to maybe integrate if you did win the tournament?
Well, I don't think the relation um, ship that I have right now with some people at McLaren is going to influence anything. Right now, only the first step is done, and that's to make the final round in Air Factor 2 in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, of course, it will be incredibly hard to win that race. Silverstone National, only a few corners with amazing drivers already qualified for it. A lot of Dutchies, by the way, which is a lot of fun. So it will be extremely hard to even win that race. And if I would make it to like the actual McLaren Center, then we will see what will happen.
Well, you've certainly had quite a bit of competition then in the early stages of your event. Of course, you effectively qualified for round 1, but didn't choose to take up on the racing on the weekend. But for yourself now, you get yourself a week's break. You get a chance to practice the Silverstone National layout. Uh, as Rudy in the opening interview that we had here on SimNews.TV said, it's legitimately just 3 corners. So, in terms of what you actually have to practice and what you have to get right, do you feel that maybe it's a little bit easier for you now that the pressure's off?
I wouldn't say the pressure is off because this was like the easiest step of all of them that you need to complete. Um, I think I can perform really well under pressure compared to some other people that are maybe not used to racing that much yet. I mean, we've seen it in the Super Pole. I won it with like half a second, and I didn't even have to push there because I saw everyone basically made mistakes in their lap, perhaps because they were nervous or something. So I think for Silverstone National, it will be very important to just nail your qualifying, and it will be extremely close with all these, yeah, incredibly skilled drivers.
Yeah, it certainly will be close. Let's talk about the car for a moment. The McLaren, I believe it's the 650S that you'll be driving in this tournament. So, in terms of the McLaren, it's brand new to R Factor. It's difficult sometimes to get over. It seems to be a bit of a handful when you head through the corners, and there's a lot of correction when it comes to getting yourself out on the exit. How difficult, in your opinion, is trying to adapt to the McLaren 650?
For me, it's quite easy, I must say. Like Rudy already said in the previous interview, like if you're like a good driver, you can just get in the car, and within like a few laps, you will be like on the limit. Uh, it's a bit of the same for me, except I didn't drive for a year, so it took a bit longer to adapt. But I think the big advantage I have is that um, because I didn't drive for a year, I'm not used to like the physics of iRacing or whatever other sim. So I went in cleanly, so to speak, compared to some other guys, and I think that yeah, that's a advantage for me.
What do you think that, because, well, I'll segue a little bit for the moment because it's two Dutch winners from the first two races. What do you think that Dutch sim racing has right now over everyone else, it seems?
I think we just have a lot of talented drivers. I mean, you have Etsy Kirchhoff from Team Redline, who has been extremely successful in the past, and of course is working with real life drivers now all the time. We have Rudy, who's an incredibly fast driver, although I've never raced with him before, I think, at least not on the track. Bono, obviously. Um, I'm pretty sure he's like the fastest guy out there. He of course won the E-race in Las Vegas, taking home the biggest prize in sim racing history. So yeah, and then we also have Hani Al-Sabti. I don't know him personally, but he also seems like a really quick guy, and I think he did the GT Academy final. So yeah, it seems like we have a lot of fast drivers from the Netherlands lately.
Yeah, it certainly is a strong talent pool. You talk about the likes of drivers like Freek Schothorst as well, who you could easily add into that list. But, you know, taking time away from sim racing, and I believe it was a couple of months ago that you were in a model car finals, I do believe.
In a model cars finals? What do you mean?
As in remote control.
Oh, remote control. Yeah, yeah, that's like my hobby. I drive the Dutch Nationals with it, and it's basically the only sort of real racing I can do money-wise. Of course, everyone knows racing is extremely expensive. I've got my own go-kart, but it's basically way too expensive to drive a race with it, so I only drive a few times in the summer just for fun.
Well, that certainly does prove why sim racing is one of the ways forward. So for you, you'd feel that sim racing and potentially its McLaren contract, if you were to get to the finals, would be an opportunity that otherwise you certainly wouldn't have any realistic opportunity of getting near.
Yeah, definitely. I think usually with racing you need to have good relationships with good people and people with a lot of money to get somewhere, and I think this is like a golden opportunity for all the sim racers out there. I mean, everyone is basically sim racing not because they love sim racing necessarily, but they want to be a real racing driver, right? That's like the main objective, and I think this is one of the best competitions where you could win an amazing prize to work with a Formula One team. It would just be insane.
Yeah, you'd certainly have to say that there isn't too many better prizes in sim racing at the moment. But for you, you've got the final to certainly focus on. You've got drivers who have already qualified. You come in the second batch of drivers. You still have drivers waiting in that third batch, that third qualifier, and then you got the 5 wildcards in the final. So you sort of already have an idea of what you are looking to expect from the opening rounds and then the drivers afterwards. Being in this second bracket, though, because you didn't have a chance to really showcase yourself at the first race, do you still feel that there isn't really that stigma of drivers from lower down splits getting through have maybe a slightly less chance of winning because they couldn't do it in the opening couple of rounds?
I think that's definitely true. I think the competition at Silverstone was, yeah, considerably higher than at the second round at Stanford. Um, to be honest, I think the winner in 2 weeks' time will be from split 1 or split 2, so from Silverstone or from Zandvoort. Um, if you just look at the speed most people carry in the first group already, I mean you have Etsy Kirchhoff, Rudy, Hani, Nikodem, and a lot of other fast drivers, and I think those are the drivers you need to look out for in the final race.
Yeah, I think that when you set up a tournament like this, you certainly do have an expectation to see drivers go from one position over to the other. And it seems that, especially in this situation you find yourself in, you have to put in that time, you have to put in that effort. But as you were saying, 5 laps and you're normally up there. So, in terms of the way that you're gearing up for this final, is it going to be a case of for you that you're in a situation that you feel that you are comfortable with the way you're driving at the moment, although you are, let's say, a little bit rusty coming back into the vehicle? You've had maybe what a week, 2 weeks to get yourself forward. Do you feel that maybe then you're a bit fresher than other drivers who have been putting in the grind over a season?
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say fresher, but like I said before, like other people are used to iRacing and then they need to adapt to R Factor 2, and basically I lost like all muscle memory from every other game. So it's for me it's quite easy to get into R Factor 2, but I think the main thing for the race will be you need a very good final and you need to be very consistent in the race. And I think my qualifying pace is great, and because I perform under pressure, I think there's a realistic chance I could get pole, but I really need to work still on the race pace, to be honest. Even though I won at Zandvoort with 4 seconds, I think that's where the main difference will be made.
Certainly is a lot of effort that is certainly put in from you, Jeffrey. And if you do get through and if you do win this race, you end up coming up against some of the other drivers who go through, like Harry Jacks, Gregor Hutu, Bono House. So to be in that sort of caliber of names, knowing that you'd still potentially have to fight maybe a couple more races, and you have to sort yourself out through an interview process as well, do you feel that you have a distinctable edge against those drivers who maybe haven't had the ability to practice over the course of the season, who have those automatic spaces because maybe that they're taking their position a bit more for granted?
Well, I think they are there for a reason that they don't have to drive. I mean, they showed with all their results that they are just the best drivers in the world. So I definitely don't think I will have an edge over them, but I think everything is possible, and especially I don't know, like in a new environment, if we have to sim race, we'll have to sim race there. It will be uncomfortable for everyone not to be at home and drive with your own equipment, and I think I'm one of the guys that can adapt quite easily to that.
Well, hopefully we'll see that adaptation in 2 weeks' time as well when you get to the final. But before we let you go, Jeffrey, is there anyone you'd like to say, give a shout out to, give a thank you for the effort that's being, helped with you over the course of this process?
Yeah, I would like to thank McLaren and all the organizers of this race, of course, for putting up a great broadcast. I think it's really a lot of fun to watch, and it made me sim race again, so that's fun. And I also want to thank Ken Bullock Bassi, because we both, we together made the setup and did some testing together. So a lot of guys, of course, have a team. I don't have a team, so it's pretty hard to test on your own. So I would like to thank him for spending some valuable testing time with me.
Valuable testing time from the core sim racing driver. But Jeffrey Rietveld, an independent driver, very rare that you get to hear that, though. A race victor in the second round of the R Factor qualifiers. Thank you very much for joining us here, not only for you, Jeffrey, but for everyone watching at home. Remember, you can still catch the Rudy Van Buren interview also if you go like and subscribe to Sim News TV. But for the time being, that's been hashtag Do You Mind Jake Sparey, and we'll talk to you later.